Hey, maybe it's just me, but I feel like even though the lighting is exactly the same as it has been, it just feels different. It feels super different today. Let me try and adjust this a little bit. I guess that's the same. All right. Well, maybe I should put like a little piece of tape on the floor so I make sure that this looks and feels exactly the same, but I don't know, today it feels different. Like this is do you ever have one of those days where like everything just feels weird? Like today was one of those days for me, and I don't know, I could blame it on full moon energy if I really want to, right? Or like retrograde energy, because we're still in a retrograde until the first day of 2024. I don't know. In any case, yeah. I do really like how my eyebrows are growing back in though. So that's nice. That's a plus. I'll be grateful for that. So, very different vibe today with these glasses. It's interesting. Yeah. Let's go ahead and get going. Welcome to episode 5 of the Spirit of Intimacy. We'll be starting off with chapter 8. Still doing really well, kind of working through everything and just absolutely adoring reading this book again, which is fantastic. It's kind of weird though, my energy does feel like super off. I feel very like awake, like super up and super awake. Like normally I feel a little bit more tired around this time of night, but I don't know, just a little funky. Vibe's a little funky. I might do some yoga after I finish this up. I have a flow that I'm supposed to be practicing that I haven't really gotten to working on too much yet. But chapter 8 is entitled Intimacy in the Ash Circle. So let's go ahead and dig into it. Hold on. You know what else kind of threw me off too is the live settings. When I open up the live settings look different, and there's only one instead of two little bars on the bottom. I notice way too many things. I'm like so used to it being exactly the same, and now that it's different, my brain is like, what's going on? Everything is falling apart. But it's life, right? So, chapter 8, Intimacy in the Ash Circle. When people recognize that they are spirit in a human body and that other people are spirits, they begin to understand that our bodies are sacred and that sexuality is far more than a means of pleasure. It is a sacred act. They look at other people differently, seeing the body not as a source of physical attraction, but as a shrine. Maybe the way to start on the path to a healthy, intimate life is to recognize the divine in everything. When we acknowledge that the earth we walk upon is not just dirt, that the trees and animals are not just resources for our consumption, then we can begin to accept ourselves as spirits vibrating in unison with all the other spirits around us. Our connection to all these living spirits helps determine the kind of intimate life we lead. The Dagar people believe that when two people share a spirited and balanced intimate life, they have the power to raise a healing energy for everything around them. For this reason, a couple might dedicate their sacred intimacy to some higher purpose, in addition to the well-being of their own relationship. A couple's intimacy is not about the pursuit of pleasure. It is the pursuit of a kind of power that only spirit can give in a sacred context. It's not going to be found on a public road or in the village circle. It's going to be in the ash circle, in a place turned into a shrine, an altar, a sacred space. By creating a sacred space, we open ourselves to other spirits, and we give ourselves permission to completely open up to another. We allow ourselves to be our true self and to be fully present. The couple in a sacred space is there because they have first admitted that they don't know what they are doing. They move themselves into that place in order to enable spirit to come and be their teachers. If you aim at pleasure only, intimacy will be short. You will get finished with it in a short time. If you can look at intimacy as spirit-driven and go beyond the limitation of pleasure, then intimacy can have a long-lasting effect. It can be life-giving and healing. You don't wait until your hormones are taking over your body in order to bring some ash and make a circle and jump in. Get in the water quickly. No. You need to give yourself room to dissipate negative energy, honor each other's spirit, and give permission to each other. When you use ash, it protects you from negative energies passing by. But you must also be sure that you or your partner release any negative energy you might have carried into the ash circle. Negative thoughts are a powerful poison. They will linger around, and when we vibrate in harmony with them, they come into us and take over. So what happens is that physical attraction becomes intimidated in the ash circle. Something happens when you use the ash and speak from your heart to spirit about what is going to take place. The intimate focus stops being caused by sexual impulse and becomes channeled by spirits. Whatever attraction you are feeling becomes something else. This is like, it's feeling kind of spicy. I'm getting chills. It's all spicy. I don't know. This might be a little too much for live. All of a sudden, you realize that you are involved in a situation that is a lot greater than who you are. It is not going to be a context in which two people interact. There may be a few spirits who are showing the road, guiding the way, whom you need first to officially bring in. That invitation must be expressed to them in terms of our inability to carry out anything sacred by ourselves and our need to be enabled. The Dagara people do not have a specific word for sex. We express the concept of sex in terms of journeying or traveling with someone. You don't want to have sex with that person. You want to go somewhere. And usually, that place is not known by you or by your partner, but you know someone who knows it, either the spirit of your grandfather, your ancestors, your dog, your cat, or some kind of spirit that you have encountered in the course of your life. So you call in those spirits. They become the horse on the back of which that journey can happen. And that horse is going to take you wherever it is plotted to take you, so that you have the learning or the vision that always comes in the context of intimacy. In a genuine intimate situation, the visual and the spiritual horizon increases. There is no sense of confinement. There is even a postponement of anything pleasurable about it. It's about a total evaporation of the conscious I and jumping into a very dynamic collective space. Somehow, the intimate relationship becomes an icon of the intimate relationship between the tribal community and its ancestors, and between you as a person and the tribal communities to which you belong. Any attempt at moving into that place by accepting an aesthetic invitation presented by someone with a certain kind of pleasing appearance, for instance, is in fact a danger. Most people fall prey to aesthetic delusion because of their lack of spiritual groundedness. When you get caught in that, it is like eating ice cream that has poison in it. As you eat the first cup, it tastes good. The second one tastes pretty good. Then you forget, and the next bite becomes lethal. This is why children from the beginning are always warned about the danger of jumping into this type of ritual space without prior guidance. Children are taught to look at that kind of journey with a lot of caution because there is the danger of not being able to return from where they are taken. This is why, when adolescents are ready for initiation, people know that their hormones are starting to pull them toward an unknown place. Initiation is a reversal of that process. in the course of which the ritual space is unveiled. It is a time where they are taught to use their sexual energy for a higher purpose and to direct it towards spirit and healing. In a sacred space, any bad feelings that you have towards your partner must be resolved. Also, any kind of control issues have to be dropped, because the more you try to control the situation, the more you will harm the other person. Your partner will start to feel distant from you, and the relationship will become a one-way street. You know, that makes a lot of sense as I read this through, and resolving any type of negative energy before you do engage in intimate contact. I mean, if you've ever kind of felt that feeling of being empty after intimacy, it makes sense. Sometimes it is just getting rid of negative energy, unresolved creative energy, or a trauma dump, and that's not really fair to your partner. So I enjoy that sentiment. As a couple grows together, the merging of their souls will eventually give birth to a new spirit. The birth of that spirit comes as a direct result of the couple fully embracing their intimacy. You can tell whether this is happening by watching what they do outside. Soon enough, you may see a tendency for one or the other to be sexually interested in another person somewhere else. This is seen as extremely dangerous. Because of the kind of bonding ritual that my husband and I have done, if I were to go out and have an affair, come back home and give my husband something, and he puts it into his body, or if I meet him in an intimate space again, he can't live. He will die. You see, when a couple is bound and has joined at a deep and spiritual level, their energy resembles that of one person. So when one person is unfaithful, the purity of the ancestry is stained. An alien energy has been brought in that an alien energy that has brought in that injured. This is like, hold on, a little trigger space here. Let's start that sentence again. So when one person is unfaithful, the purity of the ancestry is stained. An alien energy has been brought in that injures the other. The wound is as deep as the depth of their intimacy and can be fatal. This is why people who separate from their partners have so much grief and pain. In many villages in Africa, the intrusion of the modern world, which sends young married men into the city while their wives and children are still at home, has caused a whole series of bad events. Those who have left for the city get involved with other relationships there. When they return home, they think that other relationship happened. They think, I'm sorry, this is striking some interesting feelings here. When they return home, they think that other relationship happened far away. It never happened in the village. They forget about their spouse's spirit and think that they can get away with it. Before anybody can do anything about the situation, someone is dead. The same thing happens in the West, when the pain of adultery kills or breaks the heart of loved ones. Sexuality is so complicated in the West. When Westerners come to the village, they see men and women relating to each other in a much different way. if they were to see a woman walking with her breasts uncovered in downtown San Francisco, they would stop and wonder if it's an open invitation to sex, and if so, who it is meant for, and all these other things. But in the village, women always walk around without any top. It's absolutely fine. You won't see anybody say, "This woman is crazy," or jump on her because she is so attractive. A different vision of sexuality is hard for Westerners to understand because the issue is not addressed, not spoken of frankly here. It is a sensitive subject. That is why you have infidelity, because it's so mysterious. Nobody tells how it really feels. Everyone wonders, and soon everyone wants to try it and see how it feels for themselves. In a culture where sexuality is not honored as sacred, to fully embrace one's sexuality means to work against the grain. Shame, self-consciousness, and self-doubt are always lingering around, ready to knock on the door of the psyche. Many people find it so frightening, they live in denial of their sexuality. Shame is so big in Western culture that it oppresses everybody. Ritual can help us to accept ourselves and accept our spirit as a way to free sexual blockages. You know, this is so interesting. It makes me think about yoga, actually. I teach yoga classes or lead yoga classes, whatever you want to say. And a lot of the movements that, you know, we do as far as hip opening, I integrate a lot of movements to like loosen up the lower back and really kind of work on the root and sacral chakra areas. And it visibly, like you can see on people's faces how uncomfortable they are with certain movements, or even how we treat some movements that are very sacred in indigenous cultures, you know, moving and rocking of, you know, hips, dancing, even like twerking, as people call it. Like that all really gets you centered, loosened up, and in touch with that intimate and sensual part of yourself. As someone who, you know, works in fitness, I can always notice like stiffness in people's hips when they're walking around, and I look at their gait, and that always just makes me think of how uptight and how much they're clenching that. And honestly, my mind goes to kind of what they're holding back, or maybe who hurt them to cause that tightness, that closed sensuality center. So maybe we do all just need to be a little more honest with the fact that we are sexual beings. We are flirtatious beings. That's something that, you know, maybe we should delve into a little bit more instead of making it so taboo. But it's probably also my Venus and Capricorn talking, right? Teaching children about intimacy and encouraging them to embrace it instead of hiding it from them would take away a lot of the shame and confusion that the West is experiencing. Shame arises simply because adults aren't telling their children the truth about sexuality, and when they discover this forbidden fruit, they're punished. There is a need for teaching them that intimacy is about spirit, not just about some one-night stand, before they reach the age of dealing with these things. Before coming to America, I took it for granted that everybody knew how to dance. When people asked me to teach dance steps, I was surprised. At any rate, I was asked to teach some teenagers how to dance. And when I instructed them to move their hips in a certain way, they resisted. They thought that it was dirty to move that way. From an African point of view, I did not see anything wrong with it. It is a way of moving sexual energy, of embracing one's own sexuality, and also of unblocking repressed sexual energies. I later found out that just moving the hips was seen as very provocative in this country, and that a person who did such things should be ashamed. In the village, any public display of intimacy is seen as a display of power, and therefore makes a couple vulnerable to all sorts of outside forces. The more it is openly displayed, the more its power will be drained out. Intimate life, when open to spectators, is sure to decline. Spectators create a leak that kills the very spirit we are trying to cultivate. I was taught that intimacy is a ritual and must happen inside ritual or sacred space. Intimacy outside this space is lethal. I really like this first sentence here. In the village, any public display of intimacy is seen as a display of power and therefore makes a couple vulnerable to all sorts of outside forces. That reminds me of a couple that I saw the other day that were walking down the street, a younger couple. They were probably, 17, 18 years old. And the female was walking in front and the male was walking behind. And literally he was gripping her as they were walking down the street. I don't want to say like grinding against her, but in a way. And that it very much did seem like power and control, but that's something that I will have to note here and kind of go back and really think about for later. No one can feel sexually who does not have in his or her bones something sacred. It's a very hard concept to explain. But the point is that there is an intimate connection between sex and the sacred. A person who is desperately drawn to sexual activity is, in a lot of ways, a person who is desperately trying to break into the spirit world. He thinks that the more he involves himself in sexual activity, the more he will find himself or find spirit. It never happens this way because it is done outside of a sacred context. However, his desire indicates a deeply rooted belief that something greater is there. And I think that this is another sign that it is impossible to separate or disassociate our lives from the sacred. I like that. That brings me back to episode 2. I believe it was 2 with my acquaintance that I was talking to about using sex to fill a hole and how they were lucky that they didn't do that. Continuing on, we all have something in common, which is the craving for intimacy. Intimacy is a sacred thing. This is why I think that modern culture, in its advertising of sex, is actually in a misguided fashion advertising its longing for the sacred. If you accept that what everybody is craving is something sacred, and you see this huge billboard with all kinds of attractive sexual images, then behind that, you can see a psyche longing to reconnect with something it knows has the power to heal. So in the midst of that, what can you do? First, you have to look at intimacy as an alignment between the self and the sacred. Look at your intimate life as a communion with the sacred. If you understand that, then you can see the practice of sexuality then you can see in the practice of sexuality something that is essentially ritualistic. So this is interesting because it seems like there is a very fine line in the village as far as expressing that sexual energy through owning yourself, owning your body, and owning your sexual energy through things like dance or things like being able to walk around bare-breasted simply because it is natural, but then also keeping the sexuality, the actual intimate portion that is shared between partners as something very private because it's connected to spirit. As someone who grew up in the US, a Western country, it's probably going to take a little more digging for me to really get into that. So this moves us on to chapter 9, the illusion of romance. I feel like this is going to get even more confusing, huh? Romantic love is an attraction that cuts off spirit and community. That's a bold statement. Leaving two people to invent a relationship by themselves. It is the opposite of a relationship that lets spirit be the guide. Romance ignores all the stages of a spiritual coming together, where we begin at the bottom of the mountain and gradually travel in unison to the top. It does not leave room for the true identity of the people involved to show through. It fosters, this word, I cannot stand this word, anonymity. It fosters anonymity and forces people to masquerade. So they're talking about the honeymoon period, I suppose, with the term romantic love. Before I was married, I didn't look at young men in the village with romantic or sexual interest. You have to understand that in the village, there is a different way of seeing people. People aren't viewed as sources of sexual attraction. People are looked at primarily as brothers, sisters, friends. We have good relationships with the opposite sex without any kind of sexual feeling. Girls and boys grow appreciating one another as spirits, as brothers and sisters, without the interference of sexuality. That's how people are brought up in the village. The elders teach that if our relationship with people around us is focused on sexual attraction, it diminishes our capacity for friendship, and our eyes will not allow us to see others as they really are. Today in the cities of West Africa, you will see the same romantic kind of love you see here. The influences of television and movies is everywhere. Young people in the city believe that's the way of the West. And since they've been to school, they have to prove that they are civilized. They have to do it the way of the civilized. The elder's wisdom of working from the bottom of the mountain to the top means that you make sure the other person understands who you are and you understand who the other person is every step of the way. You learn which areas make your partner scream and what makes your partner laugh. Things like that. The elders know that if you start the relationship off with romance, more often than not, many things are covered up, and it will take years to find the true identity of your partner. That is, if you are given the chance. I know that some people live their whole life with a stranger. Ain't that the truth? Romantic love doesn't really fit in the village. It just doesn't work. The kind of passion, the kind of emotion and connection that Westerners look for from a romantic relationship, village people look for from spirit. The power of romantic love in the West is really a symptom of a separation from the spiritual. So, the romantic, if you want to use that word, is with the spirit. If a man invites a woman into ritual space, or if a woman invites a man, perhaps that's what someone would see as romantic in the village. But it's not like, I'll take you on a trip or something like that. No, the basic attraction is toward spirit. Excuse me. You cannot take away from marriage or intimacy the presence of spirit as the guide who approves all the blessings that the elders in the community give. Romance, in that sense, has a different look from what Indigenous people seek in a relationship. In the village, we give because we want to give, and there is no going away and separating ourselves in a retreat of romance. Instead, we are encouraged to expand and share our gifts as a couple within the community. In the village, desire and lust are seen as messages brought into you from a spiritual source. If that drives you into disorderly conduct, that's where you spoil the invitation that spirit is implanting within you. The person who feels this kind of urge needs to find out first where the source is, not by looking at the other gender with sexual thoughts, but by becoming aware of the weakness that being locked onto by spirit reveals. The person who feels this kind of urge needs to find out first where the source is, not by looking at the other gender with sexual thoughts, but by becoming aware of the weakness that is being locked onto by spirit reveals. It doesn't mean that your hormones are making you do something. Something else is going on. That's the part you need to listen to. At first reading this just felt like I was trying to read French or something. That makes sense though, I suppose. Yeah. Being aware of what you're trying to compensate for by being racked with sexual thoughts. Interesting. This is why intimacy has to be looked at ritualistically. This desire is desire to be on a journey with spirit. It is as though a horse has come in and wants you to go somewhere. Now you have to find out, where is that horse? How is it configured? And what should you do in order to mount that horse without breaking your neck? Romance, as I understand it, is this path of coming together that leads to a honeymoon. During the crazy honeymoon, impossible promises are made. When you return home, you discover there is no way on earth these promises can be fulfilled. So you brace yourself and hope all will work out. Then things start to fall apart. This is what I call the honeymoon suicide. Romance means hiding our true self in order to gain acceptance. It begins with doing every little thing for our partner, neglecting our true feelings until we reach a point of serious depletion. It would have been better from the beginning to say, I can give you this much. That's how far I can go. With your help, I might be able to go farther, but I won't give you a false image of myself. Without this kind of honesty, our partner is left to wonder, wow, is this the same person I married? He is left to pull out his hair and wonder if he is sane or if his partner is insane. If a relationship is based on a one-way street, The person at the receiving end will do all he can to get his bottomless hole fed, not caring about what happens to his partner. That kind of person, excuse me, that kind of person does not even care whether his partner lives or dies. He married Mrs. Perfect so that he could be taken care of and is not ready to have that change. Wow. Wow. People in the West must always remember that the energy they vibrate sends a message that only certain people will respond to. They must make their intention clear while looking for someone, and they must keep their clarity once an intimate relationship is established. They must constantly check themselves to make sure that what they are saying is in alignment with their true selves. The kind of attitude people have when initiating a relationship will determine what happens later. And if there is something unspoken, it will usually lead to the death of the relationship. If, for instance, your partner is holding something back and thinking, if I show this part of myself, then she is going to get scared and run away. Well, he can be sure you will someday run away. Openness is needed from the beginning so that people know what they are getting into. Being very nice, is not always the right way. So that's interesting, especially for myself as someone who's kind of recovering as a people pleaser, or always trying to fit myself in a box to make others comfortable, rather than kind of dropping that mask. I would continue pushing myself further and further and further, and end up with a lot of partners who, honestly, to be completely frank, were just takers. People who were looking to, marry Miss Perfect, or, as my therapist used to always say, have a mommy wife, which is kind of tough to deal with. I really like that she is advocating for boundaries and for honesty here, because I feel like that's not something that a lot of people really think about and carry into relationships. So here we are at chapter 10, continual renewal. There is a need to periodically cleanse our relationship with our partner. There is always something in the self that is either overcompensating, pretending, giving in, or pushing too hard. The only way one can reach that and move it out is through a ritual. Before we can communicate in deeper states of intimacy, we must address the subtle things that our partner has done that we didn't like. Because of some rule of gentility, we tend not to respond to them, and they pile up. Our thoughts take us to places of uncertainty and the postponement of confrontation, and then we become very passive. It is fine to be polite, but where is the place for us to speak our frustration and disappointment? In ritual, such politeness may be put aside. Once you have drawn a line marking sacred space and called upon spirit, there is no lying, no pretending. In this space, it is sometimes best to even shout your frustrations, because what you're saying is so real. In our village, every 5 days, there is an opportunity for renewal of a relationship on a day chosen by the couple. All the bad things that the couple has accumulated are ejected. Usually the woman sits facing north, back to back with the man, who sits facing south, within a circle of ash. The ritual starts with an invocation of spirit. Then the two people start to express aloud to spirit their frustrations. As they do so, their pain increases, then explodes. Each person is busy speaking his own pain and does not pay attention to what the other is saying. Some people whisper, some people shout, some people prefer other ways of communication. It is up to the individuals involved to decide what is best for them. As long as they are using methods that enable them to release all of their feelings. In our village, there is usually a lot of gesticulation to allow the body to speak. This is not, however, an opportunity to get into a fist fight. If outsiders were to observe this ritual, they might fear that the couple were going to kill each other. But if they watch long enough, they will see that the ritual has a powerful emotional ending. The couple will slow down, reach a reconciliation, and then pour water onto each other. The heart of this process is washing away all the friction that is settled into the couple's life. Think of this ritual not as a confrontation, but as a renewal of the marriage vow. In Dagara culture, we don't believe that saying yes one time is enough for intimacy to always be there. We need to renew our intimacy continuously and make it as close to what Spirit wants as possible. This ritual of renewal can also be good for people who have a history of time limits for their relationships, who are able to be in a relationship for only, let's say, a year or so. Then they have to get out. Renewing their commitment before that time limit arrives can be helpful in breaking this pattern. It helps because some people can get really caught up in telling themselves that all their relationships are temporary. Whew. You know, that ritual, it honestly, in my opinion, feels very passionate and very romantic and almost like I don't know, an ultimate form of love, like loving so hard that you're able to commit over and over and over and be able to express all of those bad things and just getting them out in the air, whether the other person hears them or not, just cleansing of that frustration. That's so beautiful. I mean, I guess we do something similar in the West, like in couples counseling. You know, you go into couples counseling, you kind of air all of your garbage, right? But even kind of getting it out without having to do the whole back and forth of, okay, I hear what you're saying, what I'm hearing is this, and I feel this, just not even being able to respond or needing to respond, and understanding that you're giving this up to Spirit or giving it up to God, and then accepting that. There's something beautiful about that. Continuing on, outside of ritual, there is a tendency to blame the other person. We don't see our own actions. Creating a ritual space to release tensions helps us be open to our partner's concerns, and it creates in us an ear that can listen without being defensive. Sometimes our partner may offend us without even realizing it. Maybe something was going on inside him, and we just happened to be the nearest person to strike out at. We do not usually mean to hurt our loved ones, but in times of pressure, it can happen. The renewal ritual gives us an opportunity to heal those wounds and hurts. It creates a space where couples can voice their hurts without placing blame and pointing fingers. There is simple power in voicing things. It helps people let go of them. And when water is applied at the end of the ritual, it rinses them away and brings about peace in the relationship. God, this is so beautiful. I feel like I'm getting all choked up. The renewal ritual can be performed by two people without the presence of the community. It is an important ritual in that sense that it allows couples to clear the air before jumping into sexual intimacy. If you carry anger or sadness into intimacy, you will transfer that energy to your partner. Unless the problems in a relationship are really huge, this ritual prevents small issues from piling on top of one another to become big issues. When we don't listen to the little things happening around us, we end up having huge earthquakes. So this kind of renewal and cleansing of a relationship is very important to intimate life, especially for newlywed couples. Whenever a couple renews their relationship, an alignment of spirits takes place. Special powers come out of this alignment. Remember that this is not just about the spirits of two people. We are talking about the spirits of a whole village or a whole tribe coming into alignment. The power that comes out of that is healing. In the village, there are all kinds of rituals done around the issue of renewal. There are every day and every 5-day renewal rituals done by the couple. There is also a yearly atonement ritual that is a communal ritual with its focus on the couples. It helps people be concerned about other people's problems. In Africa, they say that if one person gets sick, everybody is sick. The village or the tribe is seen as a huge tree with thousands of branches. When a part of this living entity is diseased, there is a need to re-examine the whole tree. This is why when somebody is sick in the village, everybody is worried. It reminds everybody that there is something present that is potentially dangerous for all. When people hear that something bad happened to somebody, they don't say, "Glad it's not me." Instead, they bring their support to help this person gain peace again. It is for this reason that the yearly atonement ritual to heal couples' differences and wounds and to restore peace is done as a community. The elders will set a date for all the couples in the village to meet at the riverbank. Each couple will bring along with them the 2 pots that were made for their wedding. These small pots were blessed at that time, one for each person, and are kept in their shrines. In each of these jars, there is a talisman, as well as medicines, herbs, water, and other things. After the invocation, each couple steps forward and hands their jars to the elders. The elders mix together a little bit of the water from each pot. The water is then presented to each person to sip or cleanse the body with. If they take the medicine, it means they have agreed to resolve their differences. If they don't, another problem is created and the elders must find out what is happening. This is rare, since such conflicts are usually taken care of in a community ash circle before the atonement ritual begins. Then each couple is taken to the river, where the women of the village will bathe with the women and then walk her to a specific place to await her partner. The men will do the same simultaneously for the man, leaving a distance between him and his wife. As people sing a special journeying song to the couple, they go under the water and manage to meet there. When they come out holding hands, you will hear a lot of screaming and yelling in the village. This means that the spirits have once again given their blessing to the couple's journey. Without completely getting out of the water, the couple will then make a vow to spirit, to each other, to the community, and to all the natural forces around them: earth, water, mountains, creeks, animal, rocks, fire, trees, and so forth. Renewal rituals do not limit themselves to people. People renew their relationship with everything around them. They need to have a good relationship with all these things in order to make their relationships work. At the end, they thank them for their help. After this atonement ritual, which ends with many days of celebration, I can't wait for next year's ritual. I imagine myself going crazy without it. As people go home filled with the spirit of renewal, they commit themselves more than ever to working on their intimate life. Everybody wants to keep their relationship healthy. Everybody wants to keep their relationship healthy. Wowzer. There are many opportunities in the West to be in rituals with friends and family members. These are people we need to renew our vows with too. The rituals can be either celebratory or designed to clear the air. Family reunions would have a different taste if they were given such new meanings. They could become a time when each individual is seen and acknowledged by the family as a whole. Family members would be more supportive of one another if they created rituals in which they could express their continuing support for one another or work at bridging differences. You know, this is such a fantastic concept. I've been to quite a few family reunions or baby showers or holiday get-togethers, since the holidays are pretty much past now. We've had a few of those come and go. I wonder how magical they could actually be if everyone came dedicated to clearing the air and recommitting to being a family. And I mean, I don't know how super healthy families do it, but a lot of the family gatherings that I've been to, there are pockets of different people, and there's always different groups gossiping in the kitchen or gossiping outside in a smoking area, or someone has too much to drink and then everyone wants to talk about them when they end up going upstairs and going to sleep or something like that. And it wasn't just with my family. It's been gatherings and get-togethers that I've been invited to with friends or with my former spouse's family. It gets pretty toxic. It makes the holidays or family reunions or get-togethers just almost unbearable. It feels easier being apart than it does being together. So I like this continual renewal chapter a lot because it really gives me a lot to think about as far as concept or conflict resolution, renewing dedication to family. And I'm going to go back to this line here in the previous segment. Everybody wants to keep their relationship healthy. I mean, gosh, if I had $1 for every time only one person in a relationship that I've either been in or seen wants to keep the relationship healthy and the other just honestly could give two flying fucks about how everything went, or is just in it for opportunistic purposes, whether that be to have their needs taken care of financially or sexually, or, just have someone good looking to bring to their company events so that they look nice. That actual desire to keep a relationship healthy is amazing. I'm super grateful for this chapter, and honestly, it's bringing up a lot of old dust, which is interesting. Those who attend the marriage ceremony should be the first to see where a couple is not strong enough and help them be strong. They should periodically bring them to a ritual where they can look at their weaknesses, acknowledge them, and take steps towards strengthening. They should also bring them into rituals where they will be helped to see their best parts, their positive sides, and their strengths in order to help maintain them or even make them better. Because when two people live together, they don't necessarily always see each other's good qualities. Somebody else often has a better eye. Wow. So that brings us to the end of chapter 10 here. Let me check the time. And check the length of chapter 11. Okay. Not bad at all. So we have about 9.5 short pages for chapter 11. So we're going to go into conflict, a spirit gift for chapter 11 here. And then we'll stop at chapter 12, divorce and loss, cutting the vine. Whew. I might have to strap up for that one. All right. Conflict, a spirit gift. This is so interesting going into this chapter on conflict because I have been so conflict avoidant, and I'm just kind of coming into a place where I'm able to not only navigate conflict without kind of going into that freeze or fawn response. So these chapters are interesting, to say the least. Conflict grows out of challenges that are presented by spirit. It is a gift meant to help us move forward. It is through conflict that we gain knowledge of ourselves and learn new situations for using our own gifts. Conflict is a wake-up call sent by spirit to remind us of the purpose we are here to fulfill. In an indigenous context, it is seen as a blessing. It should not be nurtured. It should be listened to, and proper steps should be taken to address the spirit behind the conflict. Oh, I'm getting froggy. Two humans together are always prone and vulnerable to some form of conflict or another. Without conflict, everything is going to look pretty boring. But dwelling in conflict will make everything pretty sour. So there is a need for a constant balancing. And the ingredient for that balancing is ritual. Ritual acknowledges that the relationship of two people is an energy higher than the two of them simply added together. It is something so big that their intellect and their own dexterity cannot handle crises that arise without the intervention of something ritualistically grounding. This second portion here, conflict is a wake-up call sent by spirit to remind us of the purpose we are here to fulfill. I love that. I love that. And honestly, that's a gut check moment. It's reminding me why I was stuck in place and wasn't able to grow for so long as someone who was conflict avoidant. When conflict shows up, we may think that the best way to deal with it is to adopt an antagonistic stance toward the other person. But actually, it is best to come together and tell Spirit, we've heard the words that you sent to us. We may not know what to make of them. They are very hard, very painful for us to deal with. But we understand that it is through this trial that we will find our gifts and our wisdom. Next time, if you can, make it a little less hard. It will be really helpful because this one took a huge toll on our relationship, but we are listening and we are willing to get beyond our resistance. Conflict usually comes when things start to stagnate, when our ego and controlling self start to take over our relationship. Conflict is a notice that spiritual energy is being stopped and needs to move. In the village, people are encouraged to deal with conflict instead of running away from it. If they are not able to deal with it, it must be open to the community. Let's say, for instance, that something is really bothering a woman in the village, but she is unable to speak to her husband about it. She can let her women's circle know, this is what's aching me, and the women might speak to her husband. If he doesn't respond, all the family members, both the woman's and the man's, will be called together. If no solution is found, then the whole village will be alerted. By then, you know that it's really late. Things have gotten pretty bad. It's no longer a couple problem, it's a village problem. The couple needs to stand back and let the village deal with it. This process, with the whole community trying to help, makes it impossible for the husband to come back with serious anger at his wife for telling everyone that things aren't working. And reaching out to a larger community for a solution makes it impossible for the problem to continue. That's interesting. So not only is it to cause the problem to come to a head and get to the bottom of it, but it also stops retaliation within the relationship. I like that process. I must point out that there is a difference between making a relationship problem public in order to find a solution for it and making it public without wanting any kind of help. Sometimes we become accustomed to our problems and want to nourish them and not let them go. We give them room to grow, and we do not want them to get out of our life. They become a burden to those who hear about them, not knowing how to respond. This is a modern way of getting attention. Sometimes the best medicine for people seeking this kind of attention is to not give them any energy. That one friend, right? Our fear of being exposed in a culture where everybody else is wearing a mask can be a major obstacle to our reaching out for help. This is why it is so crucial to have a trusted circle of people who can give you that sense of belonging and community. There are many ways of communicating problems to those who can help us. Some people, for instance, are very gifted in their ability to communicate through dreams and can use it as a way to connect with others. People who know us and care about us usually have an open channel for us at all times. If we are clear in our message, however we send it, they can send us the kind of help we are looking for. In Dagara culture, water is a key element in conflict resolution because of its reconciling, unifying, and peaceful qualities. In any ritual pertaining to peacemaking or reconciliation, a lot of water is required in order for people to be brought back to a still place, to a place of alignment and serenity. A radical conflict ritual might involve complete submersion into very cold water after an intense emotional release. In a maintenance type ritual, one can simply use a splash of water or spend time near water. When a couple in the village has been in serious crisis, they need a radical community ritual to separate them from the problem and bring them back together. First, the people in the village create a sacred space near a body of water. Then, they state the purpose of the ritual in an invocation of spirit, making their intention clear. They explain in detail how the couple has been experiencing a problem and the kinds of things they would like to see happen in the ritual. They ask spirit to come be the driver, to bring some clarity, and to open their hearts so they can listen. They ask for groundedness in order for the conflict to be dissolved and transformed into something good. The couple is then asked to share in their own words how they have been affected by the message Spirit has sent them through their crisis. The source of their crisis is then released into a fire. One at a time, each partner will then step into the water and be submerged by the people of the same gender. While all of this is taking place, other people are singing and dancing on the shore to stir up energy, thus preventing stagnating energy from coming in. As the couple comes out of the water, everybody welcomes them back into the community. The ritual ends with the thanking of Spirit for the good that came out of the ritual. Another ritual of conflict resolution involves the ash circle. It is performed on behalf of a couple for anyone in the village who is in conflict with others. It is useful in getting to the heart of village problems and eliminating the possibility of denial. If you are used to keeping your problems private, you will find this ritual extremely uncomfortable. It leaves nowhere to hide. First, the community prepares a sacred space with a circle of ash at its center. The ancestors and spirits are called upon. Then the person who asked for the ritual steps into the ash circle and calls in the person with whom he or she has something to resolve. They sit face to face and bow to each other before speaking. Then they speak about their conflicts and feelings without blaming each other. People sitting outside of the circle have the duty to speak also. If they can help bring clarity and truth without taking sides or trying to divide the couple, as they hear something they need to respond to, they may enter the circle and give voice to their thoughts. Once they have done so, they must remain there until the end of the ritual. At the end, there may be 10 or more people in the circle. This ritual helps bring two people closer together by getting to the bottom of their problem without letting their emotions and suffering interfere with the process. I say this because people in the West have a tendency to bring the courthouse into this ash circle. But it is not about assigning guilt or showing one's ability to cross-examine. It is not about winning, nor is it about talking nonsense. It requires us to speak through our heart. The logic of the mind is an obstacle to its success. The logic of the mind is an obstacle to its success. In the village, it is quickly called off if the people in the middle are not willing to speak the truth. However difficult this ritual might become, people will stay with it until clarity is brought to the group. Then water is offered to everybody to bring a general peace. Everybody bows at the end to acknowledge one another and to mark a closing. The logic of the mind is an obstacle to its success. How many conflicts could be resolved if everyone was just honest and opened their heart? Instead of trying to win, or make a calculated move. Try and predict what the other person is going to say next. It's like not even listening, If all you're trying to do is logically win, assigning guilt or showing one's ability to cross-examine, talking in circles in order to trip someone up. I really wonder where that comes from, with our legal system here, especially our American legal system. It doesn't seem like it's about finding truth anymore or resolving conflict. All it really is who has the highest priced lawyer, who can win, right? I mean, I've never really thought that was fair. But seeing this written this way, I don't know, it puts a more concise explanation, or it basically puts into words something that I haven't really been able to express concisely in my lifetime anyway. They say that trouble becomes sacred when voiced. Oh, I'm sorry, sacred. I transposed those letters there. They say that trouble becomes scared when voiced. It's a very different sentiment there. When you talk about problems, these problems start to hate you. And usually we are safe if a problem hates us. This is one reason why, in the indigenous context, people don't mind verbalizing what's troubling them. They know that even if people don't know how to fix it right away, the simple fact, oopsie, something that I very much practice myself and also try and teach my children, if you're all wrapped up in something and you're all stuck inside of a bottle, you kind of scare those feelings away as soon as you say them. Sometimes if I'm just, by myself and I don't really have anyone to talk to about something, I live close enough to a little lake and also a little creek, and I can literally just go out there and say my problems in front of the water or put my feet in the water. It feels really amazing. Sometimes that's all you really need, is to just get it out, Even if in the West we don't have communities of the type that exist in the indigenous world, we still have circles of friends, people whom we trust, people who will respond to our call for help. So instead of calling them next weekend for a barbecue, we can call them to sit in a ritual space with us. That might mean that we spend an afternoon with them getting the material ready and making a ritual space. Then we start calling in spirit, explaining the problem we are trying to solve. Even those who are new to ritual, if they have been involved in the preparation of the ritual space, will discover that they have become firmly established in a ritual state. We think we give a lot of time to working out relationship problems, but maybe it's a wrong time given. We need to rethink the manner in which we invest time dealing. Let me start that over here. We think we give a lot of time to working out relationship problems, but maybe it's a wrong time given. We think that we give a lot of time to working out relationship problems, but maybe it's a wrong time given. We need to rethink the manner in which we invest time dealing with our problems. Perhaps it is the mind's manipulative tendency that makes us believe that when there's a problem, if we can't figure out the solution, it's because we're not imaginative enough. We don't think enough, or worse, we are worthless. Oh. But maybe it is because we don't feel enough. If we allow the heart to approach the problems that we experience, the heart will lead us to places that are not logical, that are more effective in handling the problem. One of the heart's illogical paths is to create a ritual space and to start shouting, "Hey, I'm in trouble." So we need to allow ourselves to let go, to release our problem from the grip of our mind. Only after doing so, we can see things from a different perspective, from a perspective that gives strength. Otherwise, we keep shrinking, becoming smaller, while the problem becomes bigger. Seems like that's almost the same concept of journaling, yeah? Doing a brain dump at the end of the night to kind of get all the static out and put it on paper. Sometimes, just like the water thing, you don't even need to figure it out. When problems arise, we tend to forget about the strong foundation we have in our relationship. It is helpful to go back to the time when you and your partner came together, when spirit brought you together. Remember where and when you felt the strongest, the closest, and the most intimate. When you are at the lowest point of your relationship, you can have that as a frame of reference. See the language of the current problem from that angle, and you will find a way to take the relationship forward. Find a place before you got to the crisis, so you can remember how strong your relationship was. People come together because there is a strong moment that binds them. And that strong moment must be held so that in the midst of the crisis, it can be one's principal ally. The problem is that when people are in crisis, they forget that they were once strong because they are overwhelmed. But more often than not, the crisis is like a little rat who's running around everywhere looking like a huge giant. But more often than not, the crisis is like a little rat who's running around everywhere looking like a huge giant. If you have a good flashlight and you lock onto it, you realize that it's just a tiny little thing. You will be surprised what the blessing of a community, of a circle of friends, can do for you at the end of every crisis. That ends chapter 11 there. these last few chapters on conflict, crisis, resolution have been super difficult for me. And I'll probably go through and read them again tomorrow, just to really think of alternative ways to solve problems, approach, and even kind of frame problems. Because I am 100% that person that will be in the middle of something and completely losing my head until I get to the other side and I'm like, that wasn't that bad, right? I think a lot of us are. Or the person in relationships that's too scared to speak up because I don't want to upset the other person, or I feel like if I express myself or assert boundaries that they would leave me or not like me anymore, or, I'd fall out of their favor in some way. It's equal parts triggering and almost comforting to think that there are people who do those renewal rituals and are able to make relationships work and have both people show up in times of crisis. And I don't know, I have, when you can feel the wheels turning in the back of your head, but you're not really quite sure what the final verdict is going to be as far as what you decide to take forward, what parts of, this book or the concepts you need to throw away. Honestly, I'm a little shell-shocked from reading these portions today, and I'm really glad that I got a chance to go to read through these chapters, because I feel like there's something very valuable that needs to be extracted here, but I can't really figure it out. So I will say thank you so much for being with me tonight and letting me read you The Spirit of Intimacy as a bedtime story. We are going into chapter 12 tomorrow. Chapter 12 is Divorce and Loss, Cutting the Vine. And then chapter 13, this is a good chapter. Chapter 13 stood out for me the last time I read it. Homosexuality, the Gatekeepers, which I found very special and important, because essentially, we'll get to it. It's a fantastic chapter. And chapter 14, Barca. So it looks like tomorrow night is going to be the last episode with The Spirit of Intimacy. Absolutely fantastic. I'll be doing another late night reading about 10. 10 sounds good. So 10 p.m. PST, final episode 6 of The Spirit of Intimacy. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you are able to kind of take away some important points here, or, see things that either align or are different as far as relationships and conflict resolution. Honestly, the last part of this book is just like ton of bricks. I love it. In any case, love you much. Have a great night. And tomorrow night, 10 p.m. PST.